Welcome back, learners. This week we are discussing from Block 3, Unit 2, that is on education and training of the tribals. Today in this session, we are also going to discuss the government schemes and policies on tribal education. We have already discussed some of the centrally sponsored schemes and central sector schemes for ST population. We will further discuss more schemes, programs, not only for scheduled tribes, but also for general population, which is also beneficial for the education of ST population. As you know that exploring the multicultural framework of the Indian society, the state is committed to the equality of the citizens. The Indian state's concern is to establish the deep relationship between democracy and development by focusing on the socio-economic, political and educational empowerment of scheduled tribes, including other marginalized sections of the society. These visions have been framed in Article 46 of the Indian Constitution. Article 46 directs the state to take special care of the educational and economic interests of the weaker sections of the people, and in particular of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. Articles 330, 332, 335, 338 to 342 and the entire 5th and 6th schedules of the Constitution deal with special provisions for implementation of the objectives set forth in Article 46. The Constitution of India has also adopted other provisions related to the educational development of the tribals, including the provision of providing free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14 years. In short, although the concern for the tribal education dates back to the colonial period, the Indian state has adopted preferential policies and programs for the educational development of scheduled tribes since independence, for not only to bring a socio-economic transformation in tribal societies, but also to reduce the vast inequalities between tribals and other sections. The Government of India and different state governments have adopted number of special provisions for the educational development of the tribals. In this context, the most important program is Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is an effort to universalize elementary education by community ownership of the school system. It is a response to the demand for basic quality education all over the country. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is to provide useful and relevant elementary education for all children in the age group of 6 to 14 by the year 2010. There is also another goal to bridge social, regional and gender gaps with the active participation of the community in the management of schools. Now let us look at some of the interventions which are being promoted in states under Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. They are setting up schools, education guarantees centers and alternative schools in tribal habitations for non-enrolled and dropout children, textbooks in mother tongue for children at the beginning of their primary education cycle where they do not understand the regional language, suitably adapt the curriculum and make available locally relevant teaching learning materials for tribal students, special training for non-tribal teachers to work in tribal areas including knowledge of tribal dialect. And also there is a special support for the teachers as per requirement, deploying community teachers, bridge language inventory for use of teachers. The school calendar in tribal areas may be prepared as per local requirements and festivals. Anganwadis and balwadis or creches in each school in tribal areas so that the girls are relieved from sibling care responsibilities. And also there is a special plan for nomadic and migrant workers. And also there is engagement of community organizers from scheduled tribe communities with a focus on schooling needs of children from specific households. Ensuring sense of ownership of schools by scheduled tribes communities by increasing representation of STs in VECs and PTAs, etc. Involving community leaders in school management, monitoring attendance and retention of children, providing context specific interventions, for example, ashram schools, hostels, incentives, and etc. Now, let us see what is tribal research institutes and what are the importance and significance of having tribal research institutes. There are 17 tribal research institutes which are located in various states and union territories, conducting relevant research, student surveys and training, and providing necessary inputs for formulating suitable policies and programs. The potentialities of these institutions are not being utilized fully. The tribal research institutes, with their technical and professional manpower, can be directed to take up action research, participatory approach, especially with respect to particularly vulnerable tribal group development and livelihood programs. These institutes are engaged in providing and planning inputs to the state governments, conducting research and evaluation studies, collection of data, codification of customary law, and conduct of training, seminars and workshops on different aspects of tribal society, including the educational development. Besides these, other research institutions, organizations are also dealing with different tribal issues in India. With a view to ensure synergy in the functioning of all tribal research institutes across the country and providing hand-holding support for realizing the resolve of the government to develop tribal research institutes as a think tank and as a knowledge hub for tribal related issues. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs proposed to set up an India International Tribal Research Institute at Delhi NCR region as an autonomous entity with separate state-of-the-art building structure. When we look at the guidelines issued by the Ministry in December 2017, the activities to be undertaken under the scheme support to tribal research institutes are building infrastructure, that is state-of-the-art building for tribal research institutes, national tribal research institutes, repairs, augmentation, upgradation of existing TRI building excluding routine, maintenance like housekeeping, day-to-day maintenance, utility bills, etc. Support for setting up of tribal museum, memorials including virtual museums, support for setting up of libraries including digital repositories, conference hall, training, resource centers, training hostels in TRI building, setting up of tribal food cafe, artisans corner, exhibition cum sale outlets of tribal art and artifacts, souvenirs, etc. in TRI museum campus or at other places in the state. The research and documentation including audio, video, virtual reality, augmented reality and new technologies are tribal welfare measure, success stories, tribal profile, tribal language, culture, traditions, customs, art and artifacts, traditional medicinal practices, tribal myth and stories, tribal cuisines and other special characteristics, monitoring and evaluation of various government interventions, development and printing of primers in local tribal language. Now, let us look at the training and capacity building. Laws, constitutional provisions in respect of scheduled areas, tribal rights including Forest Rights Act 2006, the Parliament enacted Panchayat's extension to the Scheduled Areas Act 1996 and PESA, that is Prevention of Atrocity Act, Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act, capacity building of functionaries and tribal representatives on socio-economic programs, capacity building of artisans, art and craft, metal craft, painting, dance, drama, textiles, handicrafts, as well as value addition to art, craft and designs, etc. This can include kits and tools, etc. Conducting of seminars, conferences and workshops on various tribal related issues, think tank related activities. Organizing exchange of visits by tribals. Tribal research institutes, they shall arrange visit to other parts of the state or country. The visiting groups may comprise of people for various tribes, have adequate representation from women and officials. The objective should include to get a wider perspective of culture and traditions, to learn about socio-economic development, best practices of other areas, and to see how tribal research institutes can be managed more efficiently, and to see how socio-economic development can happen without losing core culture, etc. There is no uniformity of requirements among tribal research institutes. Some of the tribal research institutes have their own building, some others are running in rented buildings. Similarly, some tribal research institutes have libraries, museums, etc. On the other hand, some others do not have. It is thus not feasible to lay down a strict criteria for allocation of funds to states. Funding under this scheme would, however, be 100% grant in aid by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs to the tribal research institutes on need basis with the approval of Apex Committee. The tribal research institutes would be responsible to prepare proposal and detailed action plan for the year along with budgetary requirement and submit it to the ministry through State Tribal Welfare Department. Now let us look at what are the other general programs and institutions which plays a major role in the educational development of the tribals. Firstly, the Central Institute of Indian Languages. The Central Institute of Indian Languages, which is in Mysore, has a scheme of development of Indian languages through research, developing manpower and production of materials in modern Indian languages, including tribal languages. The institute has also worked in more than 90 tribal and border languages. Then NUPA, National University of Educational Planning and Administration. The educational development of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes is an area of major concern of NUPA. It carries out studies, seminars, symposiums, etc., and evaluates ongoing existing educational programs. It also covers programs and schemes for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. The University Grants Commission, it runs the remedial coaching scheme with a view to improve the academic skills and linguistic proficiency of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe students to prepare them for national eligibility test, which is conducted by UGC and CSIR. Then moving on to the financial assistance. The Government of India and different state governments have adopted number of scholarship schemes for tribal students. It includes different measures to improve the educational level of scheduled tribes through steps like provisions of scholarships, boarding facilities, free distribution of nationalized textbooks, uniform, and imparting special coaching for appearing in various competitive examinations. It has also introduced midday meals in all primary schools to check the dropout rate among students, including tribal pupils. With the objective of promoting literacy among tribal students, different state governments have undertaken measures to prove residential facilities to scheduled tribes. The Girls Hostel scheme was started in third 5-year plan with the aim of providing residential facilities to tribal girls in pursuit of education. The central assistance of 50% cost of construction to the states, 100% to the union territories is provided under the scheme. Boys Hostel scheme was started in 1989 to 90 under the same pattern as the girls' hostel. Another important development in the policy towards education of tribal is the National Policy on Education, which among other things which specified the following. Priority will be accorded to opening primary schools in tribal areas. There is a need to develop curricula and devise instructional material in tribal language at the initial stages with arrangements for switchover to regional languages. In this context, Assam was the first state to prepare teacher training modules and separate teaching learning materials for the Bodo tribal language in 1995. Bodo is also a medium of instructions in some districts of Assam. The scheduled tribe youth will be encouraged to take up teaching in tribal areas. The scheme of ashram schools in tribal subplan areas, which is spread over in 22 states and 2 union territories, and it has been operational since 1990-91 and was revised in 2008-9. The objective is to promote and extend educational facilities to scheduled tribe students, including particularly vulnerable tribal groups in tune with their social and cultural milieu. The ashram schools provide education with residential facilities in an environment conducive to learning. The state governments are eligible for 100% central share for construction of girls' ashram schools and also for construction of boys' ashram schools in left-wing extremism affected areas. For the other boys' ashram schools, the funding to state government is on 50-50 basis. In case of union territories, the central government bears the entire cost of construction of both boys and girls ashram schools. Ashram schools are regular schools having the same curriculum as prescribed by the State Board of Secondary Education. The collective and uninterrupted impact of positive measures explores the considerable progress in the field of education. When we examine different census reports such as 1961, 1971, 1981, 1991 and 2001, it provides a pleasing statistics because the literacy rate of all social groups has increased nearly threefolds from 1961 to 2001, while the tribal literacy rate has increased more than 5 times from 1961 to 2001. Exploring the statistical impact, it can be argued that the scheduled tribes are lagging behind the scheduled caste and general category in educational accomplishment. But this must be seen against a starting point of almost total exclusion from educational opportunities until fairly recently. Under the scheme of special central assistance to tribal sub-scheme, funds are provided inter alia for activities related to education sector like addition to existing building infrastructure, construction of co-ed residential schools, construction of girls and boys hostels, construction of ashram schools, vocational training centers in residential schools, IT based education facilities, equipment and etc. The interventions related to ashram schools, boys and girls hostels and vocational training centers are now considered under the scheme of SCA to TSS and grants under Article 275(1) of the Constitution of India. Now, to sum up, in this session, we have discussed various special provisions for the educational development of the tribals, tribal research institutes, other general programs and institutions which also plays an important role in the educational development of the tribals, and we also discussed regarding the financial assistance provided by Government of India and different state governments to improve the educational level of scheduled tribes. So learners, hope you will go through the e-content and get to know about various government policies and programs in these 2 sessions. Thank you.